good relationships are vital to your health.
Love that.
That community piece it can blunt the impacts of stress. It can help to prevent heart disease, depression, things like that. And I think that gets overlooked or pushed to the side. Again, just by the way our lives go, like we maybe have marriages, we maybe have kids, we maybe have, crazy jobs, fill in the blank, whatever it is. But I find even my loneliest patients that I know of, the second that they get around people that they genuinely have a connection with, a lot of their health markers improve.
Welcome to the Advanced Women's Health Podcast, where we empower women with the latest insights and advice on holistic health. From cutting-edge medical research to practical wellness tips, our mission is to help you thrive at every stage of life. Join us as we explore topics ranging from hormonal balance and reproductive health to nutrition and mental well-being. Whether you're seeking solutions for a specific health concern or simply want to enhance your overall wellness, you're in the right place. Let's embark on this journey to better health together. This is the Advanced Women's Health Podcast.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Lauren and I are coming on here laughing already. Welcome to the Advanced Women's Health Podcast. Today, we are talking to the other Dr. Lauren Reimer, in our Incaster clinic. So, as usual, with our practitioner intros, we are going to navigate what Lauren loves treating, what got her into naturopathic medicine, and I will let you take it away.
Okay. Hey, everybody. So I got into naturopathic medicine kind of by accident.
So many people on this team did. And it's like very stereotypical to be like, I had an immense health journey and a naturopath changed my life. And so I became a naturopath. And I'm like waiting for those stories. And I keep talking to people on our team and they're like, and I stumbled and I fell on a naturopath.
Yeah. So I was in a university and I had always kind of thought like something in the medical field would be a good idea. But once you get into university, you kind of see what the trajectory of each of those paths is going to look like and what the effort involved is going to be, et cetera. And so quickly got the medical doctor road stamped out of me by first year grades because the university is hard.
Yeah.
And so I was in third year and just sitting in a hallway with some friends waiting for a tutorial to start or something like that. And I had the agenda that they give you at the beginning of the year. I was just like flipping through it for whatever reason. And there's advertisements in there. And one of the advertisements was for CCNM. What's this?
CCNM, for anyone who doesn't know, it's the Canadian College of Naturopathic Medicine. So it's the Toronto campus of the Naturopathic Medical School here.
Oh, yes. Yeah. And so, yeah, once I looked up what the school was and what naturopathic medicine was and all of the tenets of it, I was like, hell yeah, that's the path for me. And so then it became a mad dash to make sure I had all the requirements and whatnot to get into the school. And yeah, the rest is history. That's how I got here.
Oh, very cool. So had you seen a naturopath? Did you know anyone who saw a naturopath in hindsight?
Nope. Never heard of it. Didn't know it was a thing, which is, again, why it was almost like an instantaneous click. Like once you start to read the tenets that it operates under and what we like to use to treat conditions, the emphasis on prevention and wellness over, waiting till some chronic disease has progressed to treat it, it just makes sense. That's something I want to be a part of,
I think that's the thing that will forever fascinate me. And what I love about having such a big team is that though I feel like, and I could be wrong, I always say, not often wrong, but sometimes, but from that space, your first exposure really does have a huge impact on how you practice, right? Yeah. So my first exposure to naturopathic medicine was my own complex gastrointestinal inflammatory endocrine stuff, right? Like undiagnosed celiac, tried to recover from that, lost my period for 6 years. No one could figure that out. Severe EBV that reactivated multiple times, endometriosis, right? Like I had to be the person to figure myself out. Yeah. So of course I have the most complex practice, right? Yeah. And then we have other people come in and that, again, that passion for prevention, that passion for education and support from the roots is what they love. They love doing, right? And I always say, like, I'm at this point in my practice now where I haven't taken new patients in years. Like, actively, I take them through a wait list. And so I'm like, I want the crazy shit. You know what I mean? Like, I'm like, I want a challenge. Like, someone snuck into my schedule a few weeks ago, and I'm reading the intake forms, and I was like, okay, PCOS, a little bit of gut stuff. Like, it was like, I haven't seen a case. Yeah, that, like, obviously that's really significant to them. But to me, given the scope of my practice, I haven't seen something like that in years. And I was like, this is what it feels like to just like not have to connect 12 dots in your brain every visit. But to most people, my practice would give them immense anxiety. You know what I mean? They would dislike going to work every day. And essentially, like, not there's a subset of my patients, probably 25% of them, that have been just absolutely set free by the medical community, by the naturopathic community. They're like, everyone's like, I can't help you.
Yeah.
And essentially my job is to go in and figure out why they're wrong.
Yeah.
And that's not always very rewarding. You know what I mean? Like, that can be really challenging. And so, but then I look at preventative medicine and I'm like, I'm so passionate about it. It needs to happen, but I don't want to be the one to do it. Right? Like, it's so interesting how those pieces all come into play. And that's the nice thing about working with such a big team, is that if you get handed a really complex case, you get in there, you do the foundations. Like, obviously everyone has the same basic training. And if you get down the road and you can't figure it out, it can come to me, or it can come to Michelle, or it can come to someone else on the team, right? And same with when I have a patient and they're through their shit show, I can be like, awesome. And now we redirect our attention in where other people are passionate, right? So it's so cool to be able to do that.
Yeah. I will say too, on the prevention piece, I was very much primed as a child. So I can remember like my earliest days, I would wake up, and before I got to go to school, I had to consume a cup at least of chlorophyll and a small mountain of vitamins. And as a child, you're like, why am I drinking this lemony liquid? Why is the cough syrup had Chinese writing on it? I didn't know that as a child, but it's like, why am I taking this like extra thick?
So then you did have exposure. It wasn't just natural, like naturopathic doctor, but it was your own version of it.
Yeah, totally. I just didn't know that, like, my mom was just, I guess, witchy. I just didn't know that naturopaths were an option. I thought she was getting it from books, and, you know, I don't know if the internet was around then, but, you know, wherever she could get it.
My husband's older than me, and like still to this day talks about the first day he remembers the internet becoming a thing. I was like, what?
Yeah. If it was a thing, I don't think we had a computer. So I'm gonna say she got it from books and friends and whatnot. But
that's so cool. So then what was, like, a lot of kids would have that experience. Like, my kids just have that experience, and they push away from it. Right? Like, Benjamin will be like, I don't want to take my tincture today. I don't want to take this out. Right? Like, when he's sick, he comes for it. But on a day-to-day basis, he's like, I don't want to. So how did that imprint on you, I guess? Like, did you feel like it was forced, or was that something that you just drank the Kool-Aid?
I think I just drank the Kool-Aid. I'm the firstborn child also. So that might be a better question for my brother.
I am the second, and no one is surprised about that.
That makes sense. Yeah. If I did question it, it didn't last long. Like, it was just like, okay, this is part of the routine. Like, before you eat breakfast, you swallow all of these pills. Because I had to do that, I've never batted an eye about taking things. So definitely once I got into practice and people were like, I'd recommend them like a fish oil or something. And fish oil pills typically are very large. And they'd be like, can you give me something else, doc? Like, I can't swallow this. And I'm like, what do you mean?
Yeah, totally.
What do you mean you can't swallow that?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I've had to learn that way, but yeah.
I haven't gone in this direction with anyone else yet, but I think it would be really interesting for people to hear. What are you taking right now? What supplements are you taking?
Okay. I'm taking a mushroom complex.
Okay.
For like immune modulating, because it's
Yeah. Amen.
I'm doing like I think it's Mind Pro by Campref, so like a little memory cocktail, because because again, I'm learning from you in my spare time, so I need all the cognitive support I can get.
What's in that one? Bacopa, lion's mane. What else is in there?
Ginkgo, phosphatidylserine.
Nice.
Yeah, all the main ones you like. B12,
Beauty.
B6, folic acid.
Love.
Yeah.
Beauty.
What else is up there? I've got NAC up there. So we're taking some NAC with selenium. And I think a B complex.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Everyone's going to want to know what I'm taking, even though it's not about me. So I'll do it anyways. I'm on something called ADR. It has eleutherococcus and holy basil, and it's got a little bit of hawthorn in it. Love that as an adaptogen because #brain. I am on proteolytic enzymes, curcumin, and boswellia for endo stuff. We have a formula called Uterocalm, which has quercetin, resveratrol. It has pine bark extract and green tea. So I'm on that every day. Mitochondrial formula. This is the first podcast where I'm not drinking mitochondrial formula, by the way. So yeah, that's pretty much my cocktail right now. I look over here because like I have no shortage of like 25 pill bottles right beside me. It's literally my husband walks in and he's like, you don't even have to stand up if you have a symptom. I'm like, no, I don't. There's like, you pick, like I have everything over here. So it's a little pharmacy.
Yeah. Side note, the Uterocom has been flying off the shelves. Who doesn't need Uterocom at this point?
It is
my question.
Yeah. So Uterocom, and I think this will actually transition really well into what we're going to talk about today. But Uterocom is something that I formulated from the research with this understanding that endometriosis or not, when there is this combination of estrogen signaling and oxidative damage and stress and histamine issues, they can really kind of accumulate and come together and contribute to pain with your period, lots of cramping. It can contribute to heavy periods, clotting. It can contribute to PMS, PMDD, all kinds of things along that lines. It's just this really nasty connection between hormones and the immune system, which we know to be true and know to be such a huge part of it. So we use a compounding pharmacy to make it because there's just not, it's not available over the counter. There's not enough people who are doing it. And I'm thinking about reformulating it yet again to make it better. This is what I always do.
What are you adding?
I want some ginger.
Oh, smart.
So the reason why, so ginger from a TCM perspective is really good at warming blood flow. And like whenever you have dark, clotty menstrual blood, that's like cold in the uterus from a TCM perspective. And so I find sometimes that little added circulatory, like I find it with curcumin and ginger are very similar energetically. And so I take curcumin separately in a formula with proteolytic enzymes. And I find when I take the proteolytic enzymes on their own, they're good. When I take the curcumin on its own, it doesn't really do much. But when I take the curcumin and the proteolytics together, it's like really good. So I think it's just that added like blood flow, warming, that kind of things. So like, I think we kind of need some in our Uterocom. So
I find that synergy fascinating, especially when it comes to absorption. That's where I typically think about it, like with turmeric and black pepper or like vitamin C, stuff like that.
So the interesting research, this is what forever effing fascinating to me. Research shows that turmeric, curcumin turmeric, right, works on the gut microbiome. So it's how the gut bugs break down and eat that, and then the byproducts of that consumption and the byproducts of that breakdown are actually what's anti-inflammatory.
No way.
So all of these formulas, even like a supplement company came in to meet with me a couple of weeks ago, and they want to sell me their like liposomal berberine. And I'm like, but berberine doesn't need to be absorbed. It works on the L cells. It works on the gut microbiome. So we don't actually want to absorb it. And they were like, oh, well, we have a research study showing that it still works for insulin and you have to take less of it and blah, blah. And it's like an N of 10 or 15 people. Like it's not a big study, but it's also like, okay, it works on insulin, but is it also working on inflammation? Is it also working on the gut microbiome? Like, is it remodulating how the system works? Is it only going to work when you take it? Where when you take berberine, it can have long-standing impacts. So I think it's cool to understand how I agree with you, like how adding one thing can change absorption. But I also think that this is where technology is less needed than we would like to believe it is, because all of these like liposomal, micelle, blah, 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 if we go back to the research, as someone who was a researcher, we don't pay for that shit.
No.
We're like, what is the basic extract of the herb? What is the cheapest way to access this herb in order to do our research study? And it's not the lipomyo, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, that's not to say, and I want to clarify very clearly because I am emphatic about these points. That's not to say that you buy the cheapest shit on Amazon. Because one, it might not be what's in the bottle. Two, it's probably not the dosage that you need. And three, if it's not tested for adulterations and all those other things, you can run into some pretty big trouble. So I'm not advocating cheap supplements, but what I am advocating is working with a practitioner who's not saying yes to every new technology because it sounds sexy.
Oh, yeah. I feel like liposomal things are just the trend right now. Make everything liposomal.
And some of them make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Some of them, you have to add glutathione and you add phosphocholine to it and you make it little lipomicelles because it breaks down really easy. That makes sense to me. Berberine works in the gut. Curcumin works in the gut, right? Like it's just so fascinating. I think having that outside perspective from a research that I can just be like, again, I don't know that I'm right. And I'm very open to being wrong. 5 years ago, I would not have thought I would treat certain conditions the way I do. Research changes and I change with it. But right now, I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah. But I think it's good that you do know that because you can now differentiate the instances where maybe a liposomal berberine would be necessary. It doesn't sound like it would be for most of the time. But maybe you'll see one where you're like, okay, I have a product for this person because you know these things.
Yeah, totally. And I think it's just that critical thought that we always use at Advanced Women's Health. Like I think because we have such a strong community, our team is always thinking critically. We're always pushing each other to think about something differently, ask different questions. And so it's just a beautiful part of being rounded as a group.
Oh, it's like, I think of us as little neurons, like we're all in one big brain and we're all little neurons.
You fire together and your wires together.
Literally.
I am now going to forever say that on our call.
That's what it feels like though, because at least one person knows something to your whatever question you ask. Like I've come from working mostly by myself and being in your own echo chamber, at least for me personally, I'm not a lone wolf. So stepping out from the cold into this nice, warm neuronal connection has been wonderful. It's wonderful.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing, right? Is like people feel that when they come in, patients feel that. You feel like there's people behind you. And I think that's what makes me so passionate about that.
Oh, yeah. 10 out of 10.
But alas, let's get into what you love to treat.
Yes. So I will say I like to focus on the people who have problems that connect to the nervous system. Mm-hmm. And which I think expands to more things than people think. I often end up making that connection for patients in the visit. A lot of people and it's just, I think, a symptom of society and how we're raised and whatever. There's a lot of factors there, but people aren't connected to their bodies and their minds aren't connected to their bodies. We have to focus on all the things we have to do and accomplish throughout the day, and that we suppress like thoughts, feelings, symptoms, you name it.
But you can't suppress your nervous system. And I think that's the thing that is so interesting. Just because you don't remember what the thought is, but your heart's racing, that's still a nervous system response, right?
Yeah. And I find like people end up in our office by the time their bodies are like literally yelling at them. Mm-hmm. Or like once we start to, work together and discuss things, you can get to the point where like you educate people on what the whispers look like or sound mm-hmm. like. And yeah, making that mind-body connection is so important. And then also into that, I think about like behavior modification, because I think that kind of goes with that.
What does that mean to you? That means a lot to a lot of different people, right? Like you say behavior modification to 4 people and they have 4 different responses, but what that means. So what does that look like in your office, I guess?
I think it ends up being like, just in regards to the basics, like with eating, for example, a lot of people have like no judgment, but some really whack eating behaviors. Like either they don't eat at all, and not in like a disordered way, but they just, again, their lives
doesn't
are so
occur
chaotic,
to them. Yeah.
It just doesn't occur to them. or they're like eating like at Mach 5 speed. Like it's just like, get it in because we got to get to the next thing.
I'm
Or-
never guilty of that. I
Yeah.
have 2 children and a lot's going on. It's like frequent. I'm like, did I sit down to eat today?
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Exactly.
Or even just that, like, again, that mind connection to when we are even like preparing food that like helps cue our digestive tract to like, start producing enzymes, start making acid, like all that kind of stuff. I think when people typically think about lifestyle, they think about movement. I think we've really gone to a place of like overshooting in that area. Like, of course, if you want to be, a bodybuilder or whatever, like rock on. But I think everybody thinks that they have to be a bodybuilder. And if they're not training like a bodybuilder, then they're not doing enough. And then that keeps them from moving in the first place.
Yeah.
So just being like, no, you can actually just walk like minimum 7,000 steps a day and you will already decrease like a lot of all-cause mortality.
Well,
and that's something you can do.
There was a research study that came out that actually showed that just doing your workout in the morning did not have the same beneficial impacts as people who went on, I can't remember if it was a short work. I think it was a short workout in the morning and then multiple small walks, like bursts of movement throughout the day.
Yeah.
So it was like after, and again, we always talk about that after meals,
Mhm.
right? Because it lowers your blood sugar and it helps to support. And then there's like a whole group of people that talk about walking before meals, that it's like, again, it seems to be that blood sugar is healthier, stress response is healthier, your body is healthier when you focus on small blocks of movement multiple times a day, as opposed to one big balls to the wall, you know what I mean? Like fitness routine, which is so interesting.
Well, and like kind of it is fascinating. And going back to the like nervous system connection, a lot of people end up furthering their problems because the amount of exercise they're doing at the intensity they're doing it is a stress in and of itself. And they're already not coping with stress physiologically or mentally well.
Yeah.
So yeah, getting back to basics and behavior modification that way, I love it. So simple.
Today's episode is brought to you by none other than Advanced Women's Health. If you are interested in diving in deeper to your health, if you are finally ready to feel like yourself, and you are finally over hearing everything's normal, everything's fine, and you want a deeper dive into your healthcare, then we are here to help you. We are currently helping patients in British Columbia and Ontario, Canada. But don't worry, if you're in another province, still reach out, get added to the wait list as we expand coast to coast. We cannot wait to work with you. Check out the show notes for more information on how to get started.
So what are sneaky ways that nervous system stuff shows up in your office? Like, so you said some of those things that people are like, oh, I didn't even realize that that's connected. So what are some of those sneaky examples? But yesterday, I was talking to a patient who has pretty severe endometriosis and a lot of pain associated with that. And so we were talking, and as someone who's had similar types of pain, we were talking about how you can have this like sorry, there's a fruit fly. I'm like swatting it around. But you can have this hypersensitivity. They call it central sensitization, but honestly, it's a hypersensitivity to subnormal physiological events. So perfect example is before a lot of EMDR, I would bend over and my SI is really loose because my oldest destroyed it. So I've had a lot of injection therapy and that kind of stuff to help hold it together. But it's like, that's where my endo is concentrated. And that's like physically what got destroyed in my birth. And so my SI, I can feel it shift. It'll like pop and shift. And so historically, when that happened, my brain immediately went into urgent pain. I would get a massive stress response. I would start sweating. Like my husband was like, oh crap. But I know to this day, I shouldn't even say I don't think. I know to this day that stress response was highly associated with why my back spasmed. Because now, because I've been able to dissociate the pop from the pain using EMDR and using a variety of different therapies, what happens is I can that pop happens and I'm like, okay, I'm good. I have my physio, I'll go see, I know what supplements to take. I take my back and then my whole nervous system comes down and it doesn't spasm. So that's a really good example of like, I wasn't consciously sitting there being like, there was a pop, I should be stressed, but my body associated that movement in my SI with severe pain and therefore elicited a stress response for me.
I will say, I think off of that, what I've noticed a lot in the last 2 weeks is people who aren't eating enough at all throughout the day, and then they eat like a huge meal at the end of the day. But then like the earlier chunk of the day is just riddled with worrying thoughts and like, sweating, heart palpitations, like you name it, or thinking almost like doom thoughts, like the world's going to end. Now, mind you, there's things going on in the world that could also be contributing to that. But
yeah,
just like going from one extreme to the other, and then you eat, and then they're like, oh, and it all.
Yeah.
I don't think people think that when people think of stress, they think mental, emotional, and they don't think about physiological.
Yeah.
Which is where I think NDs play a great role, because that's a lot of what we deal with is physiological stresses all the time.
I had another patient this week. This is a perfect example. I've seen this patient for a few years and we've been through the same cycle. And this is what we were talking about. It's the same cycle for her. She comes in, she's got constipation and heartburn. Okay. And she comes in, we're working on that. And she's like, my anxiety is really bad. And so we've been through enough cycles to know that when the constipation is clear, the heartburn goes away and the anxiety is gone. Mm-hmm. So she keeps going to blame herself of like, it's the anxiety making the heartburn worse. It's the anxiety making the constipation worse. But we've actually seen the opposite is true, right? She gets the constipation first. That amount of inflammation builds up. It causes the gas and the acids to push up. And then that amount of inflammation feeds back to her brain and she has anxiety.
Yeah.
So it's when you see these patterns, and again, I've had the luxury of seeing so many patients and being in practice for so long that it's like, yeah, I'm not going to give you all kinds of anti-anxiolytics. That might be what takes the edge off right now. And there's no problem with that, but that's not the solution.
Yeah.
Right. The solution is the bugs that are causing the constipation and the brain inflammation, which is so cool.
Yeah. I think our nervous systems too get trained from a very young age, and people discount that quite a bit, which in all fairness, like it's not everybody's mission to understand how they tick or how they came to be the way they are. But I find it shows up quite a bit in my practice, especially with more traumatic pasts, or not even like big T trauma, but little T trauma that you don't really think of as traumatic, but for that person it was. And it influences their thought patterns and their behaviors now to the point where it's showing up as constipation and anxiety and heartburn and et cetera, fill in the blank. It's a wall I hit frequently in trying to get people to pursue that and explore that, because I think that ultimately ends up being the root sometimes.
And that's why I love using EMDR.
Yeah.
Right. As someone who is, you guys will hear me talk about EMDR probably 50,000 times on this podcast. You're welcome. But to me, our population of women, yes, need someone to bring awareness to dysfunctional patterns, to hold space, to talk through them. And to like talk therapy is helpful. Don't get me wrong. But after a certain point, you get diminishing returns because, as I said, I could not talk my way out of that stress response that happened very immediately. You cannot talk your way out of gut inflammation in your brain trying to figure out if it's sepsis and you're going to die or it's low-grade inflammation. You can't talk your way through that. So when we treat the underlying physiology, right, we do often hit a wall with that because what's left over is the lovely revolving door loop of your nervous system causing blood sugar and insulin issues and hypersensitizing your brain to inflammation. And you know what I mean? Like you get stuck in that loop. So I find using something like EMDR is so subconscious. Like you don't have to talk about it. You don't have to know the source of the trauma, little or big T. You don't have to know any of those things to get to a space where you can feel calm. And what I always say to my patients is my goal is for you to have space between the trigger and the outcome.
Yeah.
Because with space, you can make a decision. And good therapy creates that space, right? And then we get in there and we're like, boom, 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 and we can finalize the loops, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That's why we work so closely with therapists, because there's so much happening subconsciously that you can't access
Oh my God.
without good therapy.
Yeah. Yeah. The EMDR therapy recommendations are just flying off the charts for me.
It's so powerful. Like, again, and I think like I do a lot of hypno too, like not hypnotherapy, but like hypnosis for very specific subjects. I think hypnotherapy can be interesting too. I've not explored like having someone put you in hypnosis and ask you questions.
Oh.
But I think there's similar things to be said about hypnosis in terms of it's just a really deep meditation on one specific belief.
Yeah.
Right.
Mhm.
And so you're getting into that one specific belief area and trying to understand where it comes from and reprogram from that space. And again, like good hypnotherapists have been huge for me. Like my birth with Benjamin, I went from like 7-8 centimeters to his birth in 20 minutes. Like,
Wow.
you know what I mean? That was beautiful trauma.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And like, I actually really struggled to identify that as a trauma because I had a beautiful son. I had a very quick labor. To a lot of people, that is like the best outcome. I had an unmedicated out of hospital birth. Like I had a healthy baby. There were so many things that were check in the like beautiful should be celebrated box. But because of how wild that was and how intense that was, that imprinted in my nervous system. So when my husband and I were talking about having another baby, I was like, and like,
What did you just say to me?
Yeah, like I get pregnant quick. Like it's like you ovulate, you don't be careful, you pregnant. I have 2 babies in 2 tries. And I'm extremely grateful for that. But I knew I needed to do a lot of that work. Because again, it was like such a positive trauma, but it was still a nervous system response in thought of having a second human, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Very cool.
Mm-hmm.
So then with respect to practice, nervous system stuff, do you have favorite herbs? Do you have things that you like love to go to or tests you love to go to? Navigate that.
Yeah. So I definitely go for the herbs first. Mostly like nervines to start,
Still don't know what
adaptogens.
that means.
Oh yeah, true. I'm talking to an ND and also not.
Everyone does that because we talk so much, right? So we just use these like big categories and we forget that there's people on the other side being like, never heard that word in my whole life.
So nervines are your herbs that like, I think the easiest way is to say it is they help you calm down without you like having to think about it. So I think of like lemon balm, chamomile, lavender, things like that. Your adaptogens are more, right? And they taste good. They're so good. They're so good. Yeah. And then there's adaptogens. So those ones are more like helping your body physiologically actually adapt to stresses. So those are your like your ashwagandha, your rhodiola, schisandra, things like that. So those are where I start. I also like to layer in the nutraceutical pieces. So like your B vitamins. Oh yeah. So your nutrients, literal nutrients. Yeah. So yeah, your B vitamins, your magnesium, your vitamin C, all of those can become depleted and contribute to that nervous system dysfunction. So typically I'll go for both just because why not?
Well, because I think that's the thing, right? We have to rebuild the foundation at the same time as we decrease the damage. And that's a lot of our formulas have a combination of nervines and adaptogens in them because what we want to do is like slow your roll so that you can focus on the things that are helping you as opposed to just like spinning out and focusing on the things that are not helping you. So like that combination is really great, but you're right. Like if you have depleted your B vitamins and your magnesium and like those types of things, then that is a stress in of itself.
Yeah. And that's the physiological stress that we were kind of speaking of before, where you might not notice it so much on your day to day, but then all of a sudden you're anxious and that's what you notice. And then again, you go down the spiral of thinking that's more of a mental health concern when really it's stemming from you have a lack of nutrients to just generally keep things at baseline.
And I think kids are such an easy way to see this. And I'm going to qualify this with, I'm not recommending that you guys do anything for your kids. This is what I do for my children. I know their genetics. I know their vulnerabilities. But my youngest went through a really big growth spurt. And then his mood was like all kinds of, he was just sensitive to everything. Like everything was pissing him off. And he's Latino. So we were just like, yeah, okay. And I'm his mom. So we were like, you do you, baby. Like, and then I was just like, no, he looks uncomfortable. He looks irritated. So I gave him, genetically, he's very susceptible to having low B vitamins. So I gave him the B vitamins that we normally give him. And it literally, like one day to the next, he started playing and talking in full sentences and was just happier and was like independently on his own. And so it's such a good example of how I had a kid who was literally walking around, dropping shit on his brother and like trying to poke the bear to like independently playing and stringing full sentences together and feeling focused and calm. And it was like, whenever I do it, my husband's like, that's magic. But that's the power of deficiency states, right? And I think kids are just so pure as little vessels that we can see how that all plays out.
Totally unadulterated.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's cool to see that in adults though, too. Like, I think that's a good reminder for when we're just operating throughout our daily lives. Like, there could be 1,000,001 reasons why somebody is behaving the way they're behaving.
Yeah. It doesn't mean you have to take their shit, but at the same time, we can hold it for it.
Yes. I'm only advocating for compassion. I am not advocating for bending over backwards.
Yeah, exactly. Very good. Very good. Well, you have a patient to get to, so I'm not going to keep you much longer, but I would love to know, as one last thing, it's always our last question. What is one thing that you wish women knew in the world about their health, about their bodies? What's one thing?
I did think about this before we started, and there's so many things to pick from, but the one I settled on was that good relationships are vital to your health.
Love that.
That community piece it can blunt the impacts of stress. It can help to prevent heart disease, depression, things like that. And I think that gets overlooked or pushed to the side. Again, just by the way our lives go, like we maybe have marriages, we maybe have kids, we maybe have, crazy jobs, fill in the blank, whatever it is. But I find even my loneliest patients that I know of, the second that they get around people that they genuinely have a connection with, a lot of their health markers improve. It's actually crazy to see. So yeah, that's what I would say.
I love that.
You get some good relationships.
And I did a poll a little while back. I think I talked about it actually in a podcast episode before, but Brene Brown was talking about how loneliness can appear a lot like really significant fatigue and burnout.
Yeah.
And so I did a poll and I threw up there, do you feel like you're significantly burnt out from life and fatigue that way? Or do you feel like you're lonely? And that would change things. And it was like 50-50.
Yeah. Like that just makes me sad.
Right. And I think coming out of what we've just went through with pandemic and all those types of things, people have literally forgotten how to have thriving relationships. And so it's just, it was so powerful when I saw that result. I was like, oh my gosh. But then I did a follow-up poll, which I also talked about. And I said, okay, a lot of you guys said you were lonely. Let's do something about that. Do you want to do something in person, virtual, or mixed or both? And like no one put in person. And I was like, so you're all lonely, but you want to be lonely? Like, so, but that just goes to show that, like, we have forgotten how to be present in social environments. And so I think there's a lot to be said about getting uncomfortable and putting yourselves back into them.
Totally. 100%.
Love that. Love that. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Lauren, for coming on and chatting today. It's always so fun. And I think people learn so much, even just like the in-between chat, right? They pick up so many different pieces. So I'm so excited to share this out into the world. And thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me. Can't wait to come back.
Yes. And we'll chat soon. Have a good one.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening. I hope that you had as much fun as we did. And if you loved today's episode, share it with a friend and leave us a review. That is how we spread this message, and that is how we are going to revolutionize healthcare in Canada for women. Have a beautiful day and be well.